see them. Oh, Bill's upstairs.
Are we going to have Bill up here? Russell, ask Bill to come, please, now. That worked, didn't it?
That worked.
Is this working?
It should be.
You can stop opening the door.
You want me for something? You want this for something?
I want you to sit down.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Oh, good. Okay, I'm Councillor Mary Watson and I'm going to chair this age debate this evening. Before we get going, I've been told we have to explain to you how to get out of the building in a hurry, which is the fire exit there and that one there and over there. And the toilets, there's one, where did you say, there? There's one at the back of the hall and to your right, and that's got disabled facilities. And there's another one if you go through that door and to your right. There's a fair few there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So lots of them. So, thank you all for coming this evening. I hope it's going to be a stimulating evening for everybody. I was just saying to Paul, who is here on my right, that when I looked at the questionnaire, it had categories of age and it didn't start till 65. So for the first time, I felt a little bit of a fraud being here because I'd been feeling quite comfortable as I was an older person. But I think it's all in your mind anyway. Just to get going then, I'm going to first introduce Professor Chris Phillipson from Manchester University, who's going to talk to us about an introduction to the ageing research agenda.
And cities. Yes.
And cities.
And cities.
And
yes.
cities.
Good, okay.
And whatever he likes.
And whatever I like. Yeah, fantastic freedom, doesn't it? Yeah. Can everybody hear me okay at the back? Wave at the back if you can hear me. Yes, fine. Okay. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful for such a good turnout on a wonderful evening. And I think my job is just to say a few words about why the kind of age-friendly debate is important and how it relates to some of the issues about growing old in cities. And I'm going to interpret actually growing old, following the chair's point, fairly broadly, because actually I think it's of importance to all age groups. And I think a lot of the issues that I'm going to be talking about are things which, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s or 90s or 100 or more, then actually these are really important issues. So I'm going to split up what I'm saying into four areas, I think. One, just to set a bit of context for the discussion that's going on. And it's a discussion that's actually going on worldwide. So I think, there are halls like this with audiences debating these issues. And I think that's quite important for you to know that. Secondly, I just want to talk a bit about what research does say about some of the challenges as well as the benefits from living in cities and in urban neighbourhoods. And I think there's some kind of really important things there. Thirdly, just to say what I think is a strategy, if you like, for developing age-friendly neighbourhoods. And Paul will follow on from some more detailed points. But I also have some thoughts about why an age-friendly body range. What would you get out of it if you had an age-friendly body range? I should say that in terms of my own background, I've been researching issues about older people since the late 1970s. I came into an interest in later life because I got very interested in researching the impact of retirement on older men, and I did some research on that. And I've done various research since, including work in Manchester, in different areas of Manchester and others. I'm very passionate, very committed to thinking about how can we improve quality of life which people have in environments, but I think particularly in cities, where often I think older people do lose out through some of the changes which go on in cities. And I'll kind of clarify that. Well, why are we having this debate? Well, I think there are two main reasons. One is about demography. And you may be delighted to know that if you're a reasonably healthy adult of 50, then you can expect to live now until around 90 years. And if you're reasonably healthy, 60. So is that good news? Yes, good news. Okay, that's right. Okay. So we'll have Tracy at 90. That's excellent news, I'm sure. Feisty at 90. Yeah, good. And if you're 65, you can expect to live, well, 18 to 20 years. I mean, that's the good news. The less good news, of course, is there's a lot of inequality around, and that's particularly true of a city like Manchester, where people have had tough lives, and that's often reflected in how they experience their later life. But it's also the kind of inequality. You know, you may live to be 80, you may live to be 90, but you will carry issues and health problems with you, which make this debate very important, because they may be challenging you as to how you can move around the city, move around your neighbourhood, if you have a disability of some kind, which by the time most people get into their 70s, 80s, they're likely to have. But it's a great debate to have. Longer lives, that's really important. The second reason we're having this debate is because we're having a discussion about how can we improve the quality of life in cities. And there are different strands here. We're trying to think about how can we build what's called sustainable cities, so cities which have better environments, where we can share the resources for all generations. We're also having a discussion, I think, about social justice in cities. How can we make the resources in cities shared for all groups rather than for particular groups? And the other, I think, very important part of this policy debate is a discussion about what's called lifetime homes and lifetime neighbourhoods. So if it's the case that we're living much longer, living into our 80s and 90s, we need neighbourhoods which reflect that, which help people adjust to later life and support later life within the neighbourhood. And I think that, that gets to the essence of really what we're about here. So I think two major factors influencing the debate, the population factor and the policy factor. So what's the debate? What's the nature of the debate? Well, the World Health Organization in 2006 launched what it called age-friendly cities and started some research looking at what are the factors that make up an age-friendly city. And in 2006, 2007, it launched focus groups across different countries of the world, 30 odd countries of the world, where it asked older people, all age groups actually, what they thought made an age-friendly city, an age-friendly. And probably not surprising, I mean, the major factors that came out of that was that we need to have good outdoor spaces, buildings that people can get into and out of easily. We need to have a good transport system. We need to have a society which encourages people to participate. We need to have good housing. And we need to have good communication. So we need to encourage people to use all the technologies available for good communication. So those are the kind of factors which make up an age-friendly community. Above all, it's a community that's encouraging people to take part in the different resources and use the different resources which are available. So following that, we had the launch in 2010 of global network of age-friendly cities, and Manchester was the first UK city to join. It was the only UK city until very recently to be in that network of age-friendly cities. But the challenge, I think, city to join, it was the only UK city until very recently to be in that network of age-friendly cities. But the challenge, I think, and I think that's the discussion we should have this evening, if you like, is how you make that general debate about age-friendly cities into a neighbourhood. How do we have an age-friendly neighbourhood and not just a kind of city as a whole? And I think this is important because there are some challenges as well as benefits which urban environments throw up. And I just want to touch briefly upon these before suggesting that we can make a number of responses to these. So why is this debate important? Well, first reason, 80% of the time for people 70 and over is spent in the home or the home environment. So that's why this discussion is really important. If you live in Whalley Grange, the chances are you're someone over 60 or 70, that's where you'll spend a lot of your time. I mean, that's an obvious point, but it does mean that if you feel there are things not right in the community, or if you're affected by the community, you're going to be more affected, actually, than virtually any other age group. So that's why it's a fantastically important debate to have, I think. It's also important because, of course, there are more people living on their own. This is true, actually, of all adult age groups, but it's especially true amongst people 60 and over. And if you take people 85 and over, who might be said to be the most vulnerable, 2/3 of that group live on their own in private households. So they are a vulnerable group, but they are an important group to think about in relation to this discussion. We also know that people's fears about and feelings of insecurity in the community are quite strong. And again, this is an important factor for people in later life, an important factor perhaps in thinking about how we can build this age-friendly community, which can help to overcome some of those feelings of insecurity. And a couple of other points. Where we know there's been a loss of facilities, where shops close down, the impact of out-of-town shopping centres or changes in the city centre, if they affect local shopping, that we know has a particular impact on older people. So we can use the age-friendly approach to think quite well, I think, quite usefully about the kind of facilities we want at a local level. So those are some of the kind of challenges. There are also great benefits, though, of thinking about building an age-friendly environment, an age-friendly neighbourhood. I mean, urban neighbourhoods do provide great access to different kinds of amenities and resources. A place like Whalley Grange and the surrounding areas and the city centre, there are terrific facilities here. And I think one of the challenges we've got is how we harness those better to improve quality of life for older people. And the cultural offerings and all the other things that are available, how we can knit those together to improve people's lives. Also, I think there is a kind of broader range of social networks. I'm going to come back to this point, but one of the great things about urban environments is that there's a bigger range of friendship networks, neighbour networks, family. We've got a broader range of social relationships to draw upon. And that's something that an age-friendly neighbourhood can perhaps knit together in a particular kind of way. So a lot of benefits, I think, to urban areas. And I want to suggest that then we need a strategy for bringing those together. So I'm going to make some general points here. And I know Paul is going to follow on with some more specific suggestions. So how do we build this strategy? What are the things that we need to do? Well, three suggestions I think we need. Firstly, I think somehow we need to build what I would call a social city and a social neighbourhood. And I'll define what I mean by that. We need to build a social neighbourhood. I think we need to build responses and activities at a neighbourhood level, and we need to strengthen the rights of people at a local level. And I'll say some of the things that I think we could do about that. And then I'll say what I think, how would all those things, what would they mean if you were developing an age-friendly Whalley range? And just some final thoughts on that, really. Well, firstly, what do we mean by building a social neighbourhood? I think the point about this is that we've had a long period where we've been preoccupied with physical development, putting up nice buildings, emphasising the physical side of improving the city. And I think that's great, but it only goes so far. I think the emphasis now needs to be on the social side. How can we promote better social relationships, better social connections in our neighbourhoods? So we need to say, I think, to planners and others, well, the social side is as important, if not more important, than the physical side. And I think part of the issue here is recognise that the way that cities and urban neighbourhoods can develop and are developing can either hinder social relationships and social connections, or they can promote social connections. So I think that the trick is to urge our planners and others to think, when they're making decisions, well, how is the decision you make about a certain layout of shops or layout of roads or whatever it is, to what degree is that promoting social connections, social relationships between people? So that's the kind of building a kind of social neighbourhood, which I think is really important. Then I think there are issues about building responses which strengthen the rights of people at a local level. And from my point of view, I think these are partly about strengthening these informal networks. I mean, the great thing about communities like Whalley Range and other such communities is that you've got neighbourhood links, friendship links, family links. And I think we need to do a better job in an age-friendly community of bringing those together. That's a key point. I think we need to think better. If we got this growth, particularly of people living alone, I do think we have to think harder about bringing some of those together in friendlier ways than we do at the present time. I mean, there is a lot of discussion about loneliness in later life, social isolation. I think that's important. But I think it's important we respond to that in ways which bring people together, in ways which they can understand and value and support. So again, I think the age-friendly badge, if you like, is quite a good one for achieving that, and thinking about that. I think also we need to think about ways in which looking at housing, improving people's security in housing is another important part of an age-friendly community. So what would an age-friendly Whalley Range mean, I think, to people, to the older people here, but also to other age groups? Well, I think perhaps 5 main things. Firstly, I think it would be a way of building these networks and supporting different groups of old people. I think that's an important issue. There's a whole variety of groups within our older population, and I think the age-friendly approach kind of gets us thinking about the needs of those different groups. I think it's a way, secondly, of developing responses to these specific issues. like thinking about loneliness and the new issues which come up which affect older people. And there's always something new that's coming up. And I think having a forum like the Age Friendly Forum, which allows you to think about that, is useful. Thirdly, I think perhaps it's also helpful in developing responses to what we've discussed over the years as ageism, discrimination against people because of their age. And I think that's been a significant impact. But it's important still to challenge the way older people are presented in very passive ways, in the community, in services. And again, I think the age-friendly approach is useful for doing that. I do think, and this comes back to the Chair's point, that encouraging links with other age and social groups is important. So it's not just about older people, it's also about thinking the way different age groups and generations are affected by this. So it's not just about older people, it's also about thinking the way different age groups and generations are affected by this discussion. And finally, perhaps it's also in the current economic climate, which I know Paul is going to mention, it is about defending and as well as improving existing and new types of services. So I think there is a challenging agenda there about the existing services that we have and how we can defend them. And using the age-friendly debate, I think, is important. So I think those are the reasons why an age-friendly Whalley range. I should say, from my point of view, that I think this is a fantastically exciting initiative. I'm also involved with researching age-friendly issues, and we hope to get a research project off the ground in Manchester in the autumn, which will hopefully include Whalley range and talking to people locally about the kind of things that they feel about the neighbourhood and the kind of changes that they like. So I think it is an exciting debate. Just to finish with a quote from this is from the United Nations Habitat Report for 2010, which I think is quite a good way of perhaps framing the debate, Chair, if I've got time for this.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, this is a quote from the annual report of United Nations Habitat, where they say cities are vehicles for social change, places where new values, beliefs and ideas can forge a new type of growth that promotes rights and opportunities for all members of society. The concept of an inclusive city, and I suppose you could say inclusive neighbourhood as well, or a city for all, encompasses the social and economic benefits of greater equality, promoting positive outcomes for each and every individual in society. And that seems to be a good way for developing the kind of age-friendly neighbourhood that I think we should be encouraging. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I thought that quote was very appropriate. And it's a good introduction to our next speaker, who is Paul McGarry from Manchester City Council, and he'll tell you a bit more about himself, hopefully, when he gets up.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check everybody can hear me at the back? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say a couple of personal things before I go on to present, I suppose, the case for our programme. I lived on this road 20 years ago, and I just drove past my old house, which is for sale.
Oh.
So I don't know what happened to the residents after we left, but Whalley Range is a place that I'm very fond of and spent many happy years. I just moved over the border, kind of west and southwards, so it's an area I know well and I have many friends in. So it's a real thrill really to be here talking to you this evening. I should just introduce myself first. So my name is Paul McGarry, and I have one of those job titles which sometimes appears, I think, in the Daily Mail and the Daily Express when when the press is sometimes having a go at local government. My job title is Senior Strategy Manager. And I'm not sure, it's sometimes difficult, particularly to my parents, to explain exactly what I do each day. But essentially what I do is manage a group of staff in the City Council. We're part of Public Health Manchester. And we're called the Value and Older People team. And we were launched 10 years ago next month, and I've been there all the way through. We've got a really excellent team of people from different backgrounds. We've got a couple of the members of the team here today. We have people who do community engagement work. We have colleagues who are based in the local university. We have programme managers who organise some of the important work that we do. We have people who work in cultural organisations and housing organisations. So we were set up in 2003 with a very clear vision about what our work should be. And really what it was about, I think, was 3 or 4 things. First of all, it was trying to run a programme of work which said that the traditional way in which older people and ageing were seen was wrong, i.e. the way that older people seem to drain on the economy, as decrepit, as not contributing anything to local communities. So we had a very clear set of principles. The first one is that we saw older people as leaders, as citizens, and that we had to try and break down some of the stereotypes of older people. So we set up a board of older people, which has met every 6 weeks since 2004. We have a forum of older people, which meets 3 times a year, where we get 100 residents from across the city meeting to discuss some of the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. The second thing that was in our kind of vision, I suppose, was the idea that we were about reducing inequalities. So reducing inequalities that older people in Manchester have with people outside of the city. And Chris touched on some of those points before. But also different groups of older people in the city, from black and minority ethnic communities, from older people who were disabled, older people from all the different parts of Manchester. And I think the third thing we were asked to think about, and to get other people to think about, is to try and get the ageing lens, as it's been called, on everything that the local authority does, but not just the local authority, all our partners do as well, whether it's the local police force, fire service, the NHS, other public and private bodies. So that's what we set out to do really 10 years ago. And there are a number of strands about how we've tried to do that. The first one, as anybody who's ever worked in local government knows, you've got to have a strategy. And you've got to have a nice document which you can go around and sell the key ideas to. So we've done 2 of those over the years. And what they've really been about is having meetings like this one, bringing together residents in different parts of the city, councillors, different organisations, to set out how they could commit their organisations to those guiding principles. We also, as part of our work, spend a lot of time working with local community organisations, trying to set up new projects, giving out small grants to community groups, trying to make sure that they've got the knowledge and experience to be able to develop a good project at a very local level. And that's really been, again, one of the kind of principles of our work, because what we do know is that the answers are the most effective ways of spending our resources are when it's done jointly with local people. We avoid making mistakes, or certainly some of the mistakes, which we can make if we don't involve older people and other people really from the outset of our work. I mentioned that we have representative groups of older people who I report to, the team report to regularly. And we've also had a number of intergenerational projects where we bring young and old and everybody else together really to think about how local areas and services can be improved. So as Chris mentioned, in 2010, Manchester was invited to join the World Health Organisation's Age-Friendly City Global Network. And we were one of, I think, around about a dozen cities that joined at that point, along with New York, Auckland in California, Brussels, colleagues in Japan, and so on. And what brought all those cities together at that first stage really was a commitment by city leaders and by groups of older residents in those cities to take on the principles, the 8 domains as they're called sometimes, of the age-friendly city. Chris went through them earlier on: transport, housing, the built environment, and so on. So again, you get this approach coming through that looking at ageing isn't just about health services and social care services, and actually the vast majority of older people, however we define them, don't use those services on a regular basis, and it's the other things which improve quality of life. Last year, in 2012, in Manchester Town Hall, we officially launched with the council leader, Sir Richard Leese, and 300 delegates from across the city and across the UK actually, Age-Friendly Manchester. And what we said then is that we're now really entering the next phase of our work. And that phase of work really is built around 4 themes. The first theme is this idea of age-friendly neighbourhoods and communities. And really this develops work that we've been doing for many years. And I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples. This idea of age-friendly neighbourhoods and communities. And really this develops work that we've been doing for many years. And I'll just give you 2 or 3 examples of how we do that. Across Manchester there are what we call Value Older People networks. And these are networks of frontline staff, and they can be from local libraries, from health services, and from police, from community organisations. And these Value Older People networks work closely together to try and develop different initiatives and projects, whether it's around information, open days, information days and campaigns to try and engage and involve local residents, particularly those who face disadvantage or, as we call it sometimes, social exclusion. Our community projects have also involved identifying resources, as I said, through small grants and other resources for the small pieces of equipment for days out for older people's groups and so on. Because quite often it's very small amounts of money that make a big difference. And we've also supported a number of local projects as well across the city over that decade. And that's really the kind of central part of our work as we move into the next couple of years, I think. The second area is around this idea of age-friendly services. And again, our experience is that sometimes services with the best of intentions miss out the small details that make a big importance, a big difference to older people. And we've worked across many local authority and other services over the years to try and make sure that they're accessible to older people. So one of the big campaigns that we've run in the past is around cultural services. All the city's big cultural heritage organisations such as libraries, Manchester Art Gallery and so on, all signed up to a statement saying that they would make their services age-friendly. And we've been able to attract significant resources to the city to invest in new opportunities for older people to use those things. We've also been able to attract resources from the big lottery fund to run volunteering programmes and intergenerational programmes, as I mentioned earlier. And the 2 priorities we've kind of set ourselves really for the next 2 years is firstly a better falls or falls prevention service, because we know the devastating impact that a fall can have on an older person. So that's one of our first priorities And the other priorities are to develop better, healthy ageing community programmes through public health teams. The third theme to make Manchester age friendly is this idea of knowledge and innovation. And again, it sounds like a little bit of jargon, but what essentially it means, I think, are two things. Firstly, it's about trying to gather the best research, and you've heard some of that from Chris just now, the best research that we know about in terms of older people, and investing jointly with local universities in trying to understand how older people live their lives and the things that will help them most to improve their quality of life. And also this idea of innovation is trying to make Manchester a centre of excellence nationally and internationally, where investments are made in Manchester almost as a laboratory for ageing innovation. And then the last theme is around engagement and communication. I've mentioned engagement really means working with local residents. But communication is an area that, as well, that we want to look at in more detail. Over a number of years, Value of the People programme ran a campaign called Positive Images of Ageing, trying to confront those kind of ageist stereotypes that we see in the media and that sometimes that we have in our own minds about ageing. And what we've realised recently in the last 2 or 3 years is that many of the ways that local authority and the public services have traditionally communicated with older people through local council newsletters and newspapers and so on have been closed off to us because of the cuts that have been made by central government. So that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at, is how can we find better ways of communicating information about basic services, but also about opportunities and campaigns and advice for older people. The last thing I just wanted to mention as well about what's happening locally, as well as the age-friendly Whalley Range project. There's a project just up the road in Alexandra Park, where we're working with colleagues there to make Alex Park an age-friendly park by looking first of all about the design, to make sure there's enough places to sit, to get around, that there are appropriate toilets, to make sure that there are things happening in the park which are for all the community, and that includes for older residents, but also going out and promoting the park as a great place to meet up and to enjoy life. Again, Chris alluded to the last point I wanted to make, which is about austerity and ageing. Because one of the things that I have to mention, I guess, as a City Council employee, is that we're developing this programme. Well, for the first 8 to 9 years of developing the programme, it was during a period of expansion in the economy and in the power of local governments and others to invest in local services. Around about the same time as we were joining up to the World Health Organization programme, we all know what happened in the economy. It started to contract. And the settlement for local authorities, particularly those in the north, in big city areas, has meant that many of the services and many of the opportunities that many older people and others have depended on and have valued have been cut back. There's no other way of saying it, really. So we're creating a programme in a period and at a time where we have to find resources from inside our communities and from other parts of the public and community sector to make real these approach and these principles as I set out at the start of the presentation. The great thing is that we have a wonderful team which is committed. We have a whole sector of people across Manchester going into the hundreds and thousands who are signed up to the aims and objectives of making Manchester a great place to grow older. Right from small community organisations which meet in church halls and churches like this, right through to our elected politicians and senior managers. And it's only by bringing those people together with people like we've got in this room that we can really make a difference in making Whalley Range an age-friendly community. So I'll leave it there. Many thanks. It's great to be on this road again after many years, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
So, and finally, in terms of speakers, we have got some very local people. I've got Chris Rickard and Bill Williams from Whalley Range Community Forum.
Chris.
This is Bill, and there's Chris. Now, how are you going to do this?
Chris first, ladies first.
Chris is going to start. Okay.
Hello. It's really nice to see so many people sorted out this age-friendly debate tonight. I've worked for the Whalley Range Forum as the community development worker for around 4 years now, and I've tried on many occasions to set up some sort of a support network or information sharing network, working with older people in the area. As we don't have a central community centre or a library or a college or anywhere like a sort of a central meeting place, it's been quite difficult. For those of us who use the internet, that's fantastic. We can send out bulletins, arrange meetings, but obviously a lot of people don't have that facility. So the forum, we're quite lucky that we produce a newsletter, so we can put information in there, and that's delivered to local shops and faith organisations and schools, and also sent out by bulletin, by email bulletin. And we always try and encourage people to share information with those who don't have access to the internet. I'm just really, really excited that we're part of this trial, this age-friendly Whalley Range project, because I think it's going to make a big difference to the area. We're already lucky that we've got a lot of social housing organisations who already sort of provide events and sort of social networks and activities, and we can sort of work in partnership with them as well. Since we started this project, we launched the project at Celebrate last week, and even before then people have heard about it and started coming and visiting the centre. We started doing sort of basic computing classes, because I know a lot of older residents have been keen to do that, and have been calling into the centre saying, when can we learn how to use computers, sort it out for us. We've done that, and we've got quite a few older residents now coming into the centre, accessing the computing classes and also the Keep Fit classes. So it's an opportunity to sort of network and speak with other organisations and maybe link up. I know that Tanmere Court, they're going to be starting an access to basic computing class soon as well. So personally, I'm just looking forward to working with Rebecca and Tracy and pulling all this together. We've done a lot of consulting at the Celebrate Festival tonight, and obviously a lot of people have left their details and contact details, and we'll keep you informed. If you've left your name and address, so we can send something out. We can send out the newsletters. We have a sign-in sheet in the hall there, so if anybody wants to join the actual Whalley Range Community Forum and receive information, you can do that. And I just look forward to Community Forum and receive information, you can do that. And I just look forward to
And now Bill. Glasses, yes.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Williams, and I'm the chair of Whalley Range Forum. I've been requested just to talk about what Whalley Range Forum is, just in case anybody hasn't heard of us. And I'll be surprised if you haven't. If you haven't, I'm sure you've seen our Celebrate Festival, which we organize every year. Whalley Range Forum is a voluntary organization mainly devoted for the interests of Whalley Range residents. The concept of this forum, over 20 years ago, because there are so many organizations in Whalley Range, and none of them was speaking to each other. So we thought of creating a focal point where all the representatives of such organizations will come together every 2 months and share information and discuss issues that relates to all aspects of welfare of Whalley residents. And we've been doing this now for over 20 years. And in order to achieve all our objectives, so most of our objectives, I won't bore you with it. It's obviously just all aspects of welfare of Whalley. And we aim to promote a positive image for Whalley and general welfare of all the residents of Whalley, and also to contribute to the development of appropriate government or local council strategies that will affect Whalley residents. We also aim to increase communication with the residents and promote, and now we've got to add to our objectives, promoting Whalley age-friendly. And in order to do this, we have to work with, in partnership with our councillors, so that they will know what all your needs are, and also to work with City Council to make them realize that if they are going to bring any strategies into our area, our residents need to be aware of it, and they've got to consider all aspects, all the views of our residents as much as possible. We also work with other partners like our work coordination section of Manchester City Council, because they are responsible for making sure that all the services that you require to pay your council taxes are provided in the area. And they are also interested in other development of activities in Whalley. So we have to work with them. We also work with the police because they have an obligation to make sure that we are all safe and all criminal activities are brought down to the minimum. And the other partners that we work with, and now that we have got to promote age-friendly, our partnership has now expanded to other people, like people who are doing academic work with age-friendly activities, and also with value older people, so that we are going to be in main contact for all our residents with regards to these important people in the area. Now, age-friendly, when we first learned about age-friendly in Whalley, we were not taken by surprise, because we've already identified this gap that we need to look into the interests of some elderly people, because this is becoming an aging society. And the first thing that hit me when I approached one of our councillors, she's the chair today, 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, please, they are cutting the funding for our youth organizations. She said, oh, I'll do my best to help you. But by the way, what are the facilities for the other age groups in the area? I nearly choked, because I can realize that we are not actually looking after certain section of our population in Whalley, usually the elderly people. So when this age-friendly things, apart from the fact that we've already identified the gap, now when we are trying to promote it, people are asking me, what is age-friendly? And I'm saying, it's just to, it's to promote the interests of the aging society that we are living in, especially the elderly. And now, being a community person, I always expect a hit back. And 1 or 2 people ask me, who do you think is elderly? I said, oh, right, okay. In the past, we could say 70 to 80, 60 years of age. And they are more or less in the minority. But now, we can't say that anymore, because as the professor told us, a lot of people are going to be living beyond 80 these days. So I find that difficult to define who are the elderly in our area. Right, so after identifying this, I just noted that we have been doing some activities unconsciously in our area to promote good relationship between our elderly people. I can give you several examples of what we have been doing. We do have residents associations in the area, for example, and our councillors turn up. And they will tell you the sort of questions we are listen, to say, right, okay, what are the facilities that you have in our area? We have got, we have got bus stops that haven't got shelter. We have got bus stops that haven't got benches to sit on. Come winter, you want us to come out, you want to be more mobile. But when we think about all this, it seems like difficult for us. We are trying to come out. So that immediately hit us as this is a sort of isolation that we need to prevent in our area. And our council then promised that, all right, we have to look into benches. And that was about 6-7 months ago. The benches haven't arrived yet. And we are hoping it's going to happen sometime. Then, we, as part of Age Friendly, we have to link up with the academics who are doing researches also into aging. And I have attended two of them so far. And as much as all the data they are collecting is very important, they are the important people who are going to feed this data to the government, to make the government to activate the brains of our politicians to say, right, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. But how to listen to them, and I do appreciate everything they are doing. Every time I listen to them, I just realize the reality of it, the practical side of it, they are not linking up with it. And I'll give you another example. The first one I attended was dealing with the architects, people who are going to design our city to make it age-friendly. And this knowledgeable researcher was telling us how she took a young couple to a park, say a park like Alexandra, and they were connected electrodes to their heads, and they were monitoring how their brain activities was reacting to the environment in the park. And then we took them also to the cities, and we were monitoring how their brain was reacting also to the activities in the city. And then they found out that people are more excited in the city and less excited and felt more secure in the car park. So I said, all right, what age group? The age group was up to 30 years of age. And I said, have you done it with the elderly people? You're dealing with age. Have you actually repeated that sort of experiment with the elderly people? Because we all know that if we are going to make our cities age-friendly, we've got to think about the elderly people. If an elderly person has to go to town, for example, she's going to be frightened to death because we haven't designed the city to suit elderly people. There's not enough pedestrian area that they can look at. Cars are flying all over the place. If they needed to have a rest, there are not enough benches for them to sit down. And also, if they are going to say they want to relax and they want to pop in to have a drink of tea or coffee, and they go into all these cafes, are the people made aware of how they should be reacting to age-friendly people? Can they use the toilet of these people? How many toilets have we got in the city, the center, that you don't have to pay for? So all this type of thing, I just suggested to them that you've got to be getting to the practical side of it. So it's just that sort of thing that we need. We need such information from our residents so that when we go to these discussions or when we go to listen to our academics and other people, then we should be able to tell them what we have gathered from our community. And also, unconsciously, we've been looking after the elderly in the sense that in my streets of Victoria Road, for example, there are volunteers who have taken 5 or 6 elderly people, giving them their contact details. As if you have any problem, give me a call, and we'll look into it. And they always check on them and see how they are. If they needed any help, if the winter is so bad, these people can knock on the door and say, how are you doing? Mrs. Swanson, do you need any help? And the elderly people, the approach that you've got to give to them, it's not that easy sometimes. Because some of them, they'll tell you, I don't want to be a burden on anybody. I don't want to be this, even though you give them the freedom to come and speak to you. I had an experience also in winter where it was very, very cold. And I was telling a professor about that, about how this lady felt very, very cold in winter. She had a gas heater. She has a gas heater in the house. The switch of that gas heater broke. It's a public holiday on Monday. She called the British gas engineer came along, and she said, right, Mrs. So-and-so, I am not going to be able to do anything because we can't get the taps. All the places out. closed. And eventually, you know, this lady was left with a very small heater, very, very small. And she kept saying, oh, God, I'm cold, I'm going to die. I invited her to come to my place to stay with my family. Oh, I don't want to bother anybody. Eventually, I managed to contact or care and repair people to come and help her out. And we managed to find a retired gas.
It's up to me what I do. You're always trying to get me, bring me down. Every single one of you.
And then on his own, it comes down again. Now, somebody has installed that thermostat there and put number 1, 2, 3, 4, not 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees centigrade to help the poor woman. You put it there, and the woman doesn't understand, you know, what temperature she's checking on. And she also doesn't get the concept that when that temperature gets to, say, 30 degrees, it has to drop down again and then rises up to 30 degrees. She said, I'm just frightened, I'm on my own, you're going to blow up. So she wouldn't even use that. She only used the gas heater. So I was discussing it again with our professor today because there was a discussion recently about energy consumption and aging. And I was saying that we need to get our energy producers who are installing things in houses to make it user-friendly and age-friendly so that these people will be able to benefit from it. Otherwise, you can install it. If the lady doesn't know how to use what the thermostat does, you're wasting your time, she won't use it. So where's the efficiency? And also, we've been asked to insulate our houses for winter. Now, nobody has thought about what's going to happen when we get the weather like this. So one of the professors was telling us last week that, well, you know, since the winter allowance has been introduced, the number of deaths among the elderly people has dropped. But also, in summer, there's also a large number of elderly people dying. Well, that's obvious because the police will tell us not to open our windows for security. Right? There is no fan. The house is well insulated. It's too hot to stay in. So, I mean, why can't somebody walk that out and say, well, we should be thinking now, not just of winter, we should be thinking about summer. Maybe put a fan on like this. So anyway, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because as a community person, this is the sort of thing that we experience. And with your help, with all our residents' help, we'll give any information that you want to pass on to us with regards to anybody, any age group. We're at your service. Please contact us and let us know so we can take all this information and pass it on to valuable other people or to our professors. And if anybody wants to know more about what we community forum, please, at the end of the meeting, Chris and myself will be available and we'll be able to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Chris, earlier. According to our agenda, we've got a coffee break now. We don't have to drink coffee, we can drink juice, we can drink tea.
Yeah, and water.
And we can have a little chat amongst ourselves because afterwards we want discussion, we want ideas. One of the issues I think we ought to discuss is the fact that older people are contributors, they're not just recipients. And I think that given a little encouragement, we could have a really good older people's network in our area that contributes both to each other but also to the wider community. And I'd like you to think about that whilst everybody goes next door and has a drink and a little break. Okay? I think we could rule the world with
Sorry?
I think we could rule the world with these older people.
Excellent.
Well, in our little neighbourhood we could. It got to the point when because you read about all this stuff about older people, the health service cracking apart, and I thought, that's never thought to me now. And I'm this baby boomer that's had it good all my life, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's really bad, the way that debate has been.
Oh, it's been polarised, hasn't it?
So David Williams started it off.
Yes. and I mean it's like I think that the people that started it off are the people that actually didn't live through the 40s and 50s.
Well,
When it was actually pretty damn tough.
Yeah, it was tough, and there are a lot of inequalities within the baby boomers. I mean, a lot of people don't have much housing access. I mean, a lot of people are very it's huge. It really makes me.
Yeah.
Let's get some coffee.
Right. I'm just going to nip it. We've lost one or two people, but I think there's still a few of us to keep going on this. We were going to have DVDs. Unfortunately, I understand that the technology has worked insufficiently well for them to be here. But at least that's what my information is. We'll blame it on the technology. Okay? And you can see me later. Right. So we're straight on to the question and answer and panel discussion. And I want everybody really to have a chance to have their say, both about what you've heard, but also more about how we can make Whalley Range as age-friendly as possible, and what does that actually mean for us that live here. So who's going to kick off? Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jerry Collier.
No. This technology works.
Right, yes. My name's Jerry Collier and I live in the south end of the ward. And one of the things about that is that people in that end of the ward tend to think of themselves as living in Chiltern rather than Whalley Range. But there are a number of us here, so I'm glad to be here. I'm also one of these older men with old men's problems. And it struck me that one of the things that would be very useful for older people, probably not just men like me, but old women as well, is for those public premises that do have toilets to actually advertise them. Just a sign, by the door saying, our toilets are accessible, something like that. I mean, there are one or two places that say, these toilets are for patrons only. I'm thinking of the Royal Oak, for one example. But if the powers that be could, if we as a community could persuade our local facilities to actually publicise them and make people welcome, that would be very useful for us.
Well, there's one very positive suggestion. Freddie.
was just thinking the same, when you said that, I was thinking about the amount of buildings that still don't have mobility access. I thought that was a law, but I'm amazed being like immobile myself. Anyway, how many buildings have steps and not lifts? Anyway, how many buildings have steps and not lifts?
Okay.
Most of the lips and point you down your throat. No rude jokes. This is a Methodist church.
Worst proposition.
Close to your lips and...
My name is... Hi, good evening. Sorry for a protracted older moment. One of the things that occurs to me is actually, looking here, I know a number of people here. My name's Chris, by the way. And it's the social capital that we represent. And we've got a huge number of skills here. And somehow, I mean, yes, there are things. It's about what can we do, not just for ourselves, but what can we do for each other. Do you understand? We always end up talking about laboratories or large print books, all of which are necessary, but also something has to come from inside, to come from within inside. And it's about valuing our skills. And it would seem to me that there may be some kind of skills audit, or when I used to be a probation officer, I'm currently a painter and decorator. Do you know what I know? There's teachers, there's ex-head teachers in this room, there's ex-social workers in this room, there's people who can read a book, of more than 200 pages here. This is good. So maybe we should be a bit more, I think the word is assertive, about who we are and what we've got. Thank you.
Right. We've had three contributions. Oh, go on then, Trevor. We'll let you go. And then we'll get some responses.
I'm afraid I'm able to be here for the first part. If I'm repeating what was said then, what I want to do is to put in a word for children and neighbours. That we have a mums and babies on a Tuesday morning, but the rest of the effort goes into work on behalf of people. I don't contribute a lot, but I'm a driver, and I'm at the envy of my friends. I pick up women every Friday morning and take them to keep fit. And once a month there's a Sunday meal laid on with entertainment and so on. And this can be used by older people, and certainly the ones who do use it really appreciate it. So, two things. One, you could join. Two, you could be a volunteer. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Trevor omitted to say that children neighbours is in fact involved.
Okay. Can we have some responses?
Well, just on that last point. I mean, I think that's an incredibly important point, and I think really the age-friendly activity should build on and reflect some of those sorts of activities. And I mean, somebody raised the issue with me during the break that there are an awful lot of good things that go on in communities in Manchester. And I think the age-friendly activity very much needs to reflect that and not, start afresh, start on a new page, because that's clearly a mistake. And on the point you make about recognising the strengths in community, I think that's true. I think communities do have strengths, but I mean, at the same time, I think there are people who are inevitably isolated from the activities that go on. And I think it's also the case, and I think this is the exciting thing about the age-friendly debate. I think there are a whole lot of new issues which are emerging with ageing populations. I mean, after all, this is the first time in history that people have lived into their 80s and 90s in such significant numbers. I mean, before the 20th century, in the 21st century, people didn't have an expectation of life, such a long life, particularly working people. So this is a new situation, and it's new for communities. And this is the first time communities have had the experience of having people in their 80s, 90s, and that's a normal thing. And I think that is a big challenge still. How are we adjusting to that? And you know, Paul pointed out the issues facing services at the present time, and I think, you know, that is fundamental. So there's a big challenge here. And I think on the first point, I don't know who raised the issue about the toilet facilities. Again, I was part of a research study in Old Moat, and we asked through questionnaires and focus groups some of the issues which people were concerned about, and poor transport, important, poor paving, important, problems with housing, important, but lack of toilet facilities, people also raised as a really important issue, and feeling that they couldn't go into cafes or other places because it was awkward to do that if you just wanted to go to the toilet. So I think there are some really important issues there, which you know, we ought to be debating more through the age-friendly guise. I don't know whether Paul wanted to add anything.
Well, the two people I was going to address are both left. I don't know if it's something. I was going to say something Chris said, or
no. It's they've got another meeting.
Right. Okay. Well, the first point about the loos is something that those of us who've been involved in this type of work for any length of time recognise as an issue which comes up at time and again. So Chris mentioned the work that's been done in the Withington Old Moat area. And one of the projects that the local housing organisation, Southway Housing, took on as a local campaign, an idea which they unashamedly stole from the New York City Age-Friendly City programme, was a project called Take a Seat. And this is essentially a project where local businesses sign up to a kind of charter, an age-friendly business charter. And in the charter, they will sign up to making, if it's appropriate, the loo available for older people to go to. Where if people want to take a rest, this is where it comes from, take a seat, they can just sit down in the local shop, if it's safe to do so, and just have a glass of water and just take a cup of tea, I guess if they're lucky, and just take some time out from doing their shopping. So I think there's something like a dozen or 15 local businesses signed up to that on mainly on Withington, on Wilmslow Road in Withington and some of the surrounding roads. So that's again a very practical approach which can address that issue. In terms of Chorlton Good Neighbours, and I was told off actually at a public meeting for saying it's great to be in Chorlton, at Chorlton Good Neighbours, and first hand went up and said, "You're in Whalley Range, Mr McGarry." So I've come a cropper with that one before now. I think that the model of Chorlton Good Neighbours and other groups in the south of the city, such as Withington Assist, Burnage and Didsbury Good Neighbours, are excellent ones, and they're groups that have been in the city and in other places obviously for many years, and they do a brilliant job, not least because they're staffed by, run by and accountable to local people who know the area and who trust organisations. The there are risks that go along with those community organisations as well. And one of the problems we see across the city is in the areas where you really want to Chiltern good neighbours, maybe in some of the poorer areas of the city, they're less likely to find them because there are less ex-teachers, less social workers, less people who've had developed those skills in their work life which they can then take into retirement. And there was an interesting article, I think it was possibly in the Guardian today or in the Independent, I'm not sure. The Government Minister for Social Care, Norman Lamb MP, has just discovered neighbourhood groups as being a real way forward 20 years after, or longer after the rest of us. But that's not a partisan point, by the way. But I think absolutely the right way to go.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add. I think what I would like to comment on is the issue of promoting personal skills. I've always had the opinion that there are a lot of skills hidden among our elderly people, which even the younger generation should be able to benefit from, and we don't want to lose them, and then all these skills disappear. You know, and people have laughed at me when I said, I've got a daughter who can't even hem her skirts. And I just said, it's one of those things that, our elderly people they have personal skills in embroidery, they've got personal skills in sewing, and all these little things that we think are insignificant. Plus the fact that, there might be people who are retired, they're social workers. I mean, if personal skills in embroidery, they've got personal skills in sewing, and all these little things that we think are insignificant. Plus the fact that, there might be people who are retired, they're social workers. I mean, if we can encourage that, then we promote intergenerational concept where the younger ones will be able to benefit from the older ones, and then the older ones will be able to learn something from the younger ones. And that will be a part of our remit in promoting age-friendly in Manchester. With regards to the toilets, our councillor here will tell you that since we've been looking into the Alexandra Park issue before we got the grant for it, one of the things that prevent elderly people from going into that car park, into that Alexandra Park, is the security as well as the lack of toilets. And it's very embarrassing, for simple things like that not to be even available in Alexandra Park, as big as it is. Now, when this restoration is taking place, we are hoping to making sure that all these things are definitely available.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, I want to say something which is not. My voice not as loud as yours. My issue for me is not just to do with older people, but I think it affects older people quite a lot. And I think it has to do with how filthy Manchester is getting and what we can do about that. And it's not just, I walk down Upper Chorlton Road, and there are jewelries lying on the street, and papers and plastic things and glasses and bottles and dog poo. And in winter it's worse because you slip all over the place and you can fall on the glass. And I would like to, I know it's to do with cutbacks and so on, but I think we need to think creatively about how to deal with the issues that are popping up over cutbacks. I'm not asking for an answer now, but I'm just raising the issue that it's turning into a dump, and it's very sad because we live in Manchester, we love it, and we have to say it, and I have to say that. I'm not coming from making criticism, because I care about it. The other thing that I do want to actually reinforce is that older people have skills, and it's not just the normal skills that come with growing old and experience, but you have actually work. And I was talking to someone earlier this evening that when I need something, I'm an older person, you don't have to say, which I have been, and I needed something, I'm an older person, but if I'm organizing a conference or something, I'm blah, 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 So my identity changes according to what my needs are. So I think it would be quite interesting to see, to have a kind of database of what skills some of the older people in this borough
ward in our neighbourhood. Yeah.
I wonder if you could say something about what Manchester is doing in terms of housing, age-friendly housing. It might not necessarily be around Whalley Road, maybe things are happening in other parts of the city, because it seems to me it's a really crucial issue that if people want to live, they want to stay in the same communities that they live in, age-friendly housing is absolutely crucial.
Okay. Louder.
What I'd like to follow on saying, what age-friendly things Manchester is doing about meeting in people's homes.
Okay. So this lady there.
I missed that.
What is Manchester doing about people who end up in old people's homes?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I've been fortunate to be a student on the aging course last year, and quite a few of the things that we learned and what we had here today has become so sort of vivid, and meeting Professor Alison again once more makes it really more poignant and effective. That things that people have said here today, we've already seen on the courses that are taking place in other places in terms of the generational gaps, that is most effective and is practical. Because all the people who have skills that are dormant but are not encouraged, they are not able to come out because of other aspects. So it's looking out into all those things and how the intergenerational gaps could be closed, because those things will be wasted, will be dead and buried. Young people will not, like the chairman said, will not be able to hem their skirt or put a buttonhole or darn their socks. Those little things, or maybe push their bed or whatever, little things that are practical in society.
Okay. I'm going to give some responses and then we'll take some more points. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks. Just the last point first. I take it you were referring to the Ageing Studies course. Okay. Just for those of you who may not have heard about this, jointly with the council, jointly with Keele University, which is where we met Chris many years ago, before we moved to Manchester, we developed a course, an 8-module course for frontline staff, from everything from the local fire service through cultural organisations, housing organisations, and so on. And the idea was to try and train groups of staff who work with older people every day about the kind of theory and concepts attached to ageing, and of some of the particular policy issues and so on. And each person was asked to go away, and I think we're up to about 70 now people, maybe a few more, who've been on that course. So that's a really good investment and a way that we've tried to change services to age-friendly services. Just on some of the points that were made, I'll just pick out the housing one, because you're absolutely right. And what we find is that the poorest older people tend to be the older people who have the least choice in housing provision and tend to end up in the worst housing. I mean, in one sense, it's not a great surprise, but what it does mean is that older people end up in housing which isn't necessarily appropriate to their needs, isn't where they want to live. It may be away from their friends and family, so on and so forth. So that's the challenge. And if you go outside, I was travelling around Cheshire over the weekend. If you travel around Cheshire, what you'll see is lots of these, I think, Sunrise and different other housing, these kind of almost gated communities for fairly wealthy or older people who sell their house up in and go and live out in one of these retirement communities. That choice isn't here for many of the older people in Manchester. So what the city, and I think the other thing to remember as well is that the vast majority of older people, again, however we define them, live in mainstream housing. They live in the house, same house that they've lived in for 10, 20, 40 years. And what we do to ensure that is that we invest in care and repair and services like that, so people can make their homes more adaptable. We make sure that as many of the public sector, former public sector housing, are built up to this decent housing standards. We try and make sure that as many services are available to people where they live. However, there's always going to be people who can't access that housing. I know the council is working hard to try and attract capital to fund new projects, and that's the key thing. Is since the crash, there's been less and less capital from central government and from the private sector to fund retirement or specialist housing for older people. So that's a real issue for us. Just in terms of residential and nursing care, the council has doesn't own any residential care directly, like in the way that it did into the kind of 90s. But we do have a duty to make sure that those homes provide good quality of care jointly with our partners in the NHS and elsewhere. But we do have a number of projects, such as in public health, we have a nutrition project which is about trying to make meal times a better experience with older people, where some of our staff went into care homes and observed people and found out what made meal times most effective and most enjoyable. And we're just about to bid to the Arts Council and the Bearing Foundation for £250,000, I think it is, for arts projects to go into residential homes, building on a number of projects, a storybox project, and a project with Manchester Camerata where classical musicians go into residential homes and make music with people who suffer from dementia. Again, it's really down to the resources that many of these residential homes have. I'll just finish off by saying, sorry, I've gone on too long, but just very briefly about rubbish and skills. Maybe Chris could pick up the point about the kind of physical environment and the impact it has on people's perceptions of their area. But in terms of skills, you may have heard this idea of kind of time banks where people sign up to a kind of a project where they, if they're a former solicitor or a gardener or whatever, they'll put an hour of their time into the time bank, and they can draw that out against somebody else who has another skill. And these projects are around the country, and sometimes they work very well, sometimes not so well. But it seemed, I was reminded of a piece of work in Miles Platting, which is just north of the city centre, as you know, where a group of older women started work with a group of young mums, and they were young mums, around food and cooking of food and preparing of food. And these were two groups who maybe kind of didn't speak to each other, didn't see each other as natural allies in the community. But over, I think, a 6 or 12-month period, through one of the local community projects, getting them together, you got young mums learning how to cook on a budget, I guess, and learning how new skills. But also the young mums taught some of the older women about different types of food. And I think the main thing that we got out of this project is that people knew each other, that they would stop and talk to each other about how's Jenny or how's John getting on? Do you need somebody to babysit maybe? And that's really the kind of back to the point of social capital. In some communities, those things are commonplace. In other communities, less so. So I think that's one of the ways we can share skills.
Mm. Do you want to say something very briefly?
Said everything. No, perhaps get some more questions.
Yeah, we just have this last contribution. I'm conscious of the time, and we've still got next steps.
Quite a few people have mentioned how important it is to give other people an opportunity to use their skills, and also people have mentioned the possibilities of different generations mutually benefiting from having contact. Is one of the reasons to not have, if you like, ghettos of older people, to have mixed housing. But aside from that, this is partly a plug for Intergen, which is an organisation I recruit people, old people in Whalley Range to volunteer in local schools. And everyone's asking about that one. But one of the problems recruit people, old people in Whalley Range to volunteer in local schools. And everyone's asking about that one. But one of the problems that organisations like ours has, and it may be true of Children's and Aid and things like that, is that when we apply for funding from public organisations, whether it's the council or whether it's charitable trust, whether they say, so what's your evidence? How can you prove it helps other people? And I wonder whether for little organisations like us, people like you can help us in some way with some of that expertise in doing evidence, in doing research amongst our own users to show benefit, because things like improving quality of life are a bit hard to get hold of. They're not so much about facts, they're about how people feel about themselves and feel about how to measure that. That's difficult. I mean, I know there are questionnaires, there are questions around we could use, but also when you're doing that, it's comparing your own little bunch of users with a wider population, saying, look, with this intervention, we've got X improvement, and without this intervention, that people don't make this improvement. So little organisations need help, and maybe you can help us.
Okay. Right. Yes? One more briefly.
One more brief question. Chris Ment gave a list of age-friendly issues, and one of them was communication. And I was having a discussion over tea from someone who says he's too shy to speak. I don't believe it. Anchor housing is not Wi-Fi connected or friendly. And when he, and I think a friend is another place, asked for Wi-Fi in the public areas to that housing complex, they were told that it would only be available if they paid for it. I think there's an issue here.
Yes,
in the next few years.
Yeah. Thank you for raising that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're going to have to wind up. Paul's going to give us a treat and tell us about next steps.
Okay.
Are you going to be able to do that?
Can you,
Building on the
try my
contributions.
I'll try my best. I'll stand up.
Yes.
Senior officer.
I'm being heckled by the panel members, which I was going to say as a first, but that would be a lie. Okay, so I think in terms of next steps, there are a few things that we want to do. I think the first thing to say is that we want to build on all the good things that already happen, and all the experience and the projects such as the ones that have been mentioned. We want to support those to grow. But there are a number of new things that, building on our work in other neighbourhoods and our experience over the years, that we'd like to see happen as well. Having said all, and I've also mentioned some of those, having said all that, what our experience tells us more than anything is that the local residents and the local organisations need to decide for themselves what's important. I could give you a list of 10 things I think would be great to do, and quite possibly I will in a moment. But it's really down to local residents to decide what's important. That's kind of whole methodology and approach. But see, these are some of the things I think that people, we can get from the debate. One of the things that's worked well elsewhere in Manchester and in other places, including New York, as I mentioned before, is this idea of community auditors. So raising the point about rubbish and so on. But we have a kind of a way of collecting data through local residents about the things that would make the area more age-friendly. So we know that other areas, and I think Tony who's here from Old Moat, was one of the people who collected information which went into a local action plan. So that's one of the opportunities. there's been discussion about getting a network of local residents together who can meet to talk about taking some of these issues forward, and that's certainly something that's been very effective in other areas. There's the project as part of Alex Park, where we've got different residents groups involved, and we'd like people to be involved in trying to make, in supporting Alex Park to become a good place for older people to enjoy, and that's a partnership that we're involved in. I think people have mentioned IT a number of times as well, and I think that's something we need to, for some people it becomes a wonderful gateway for experiences and developing new interests. For others it's not so much, but there is a lot we can do there, I think. And there have been a number of other points. Certainly there's a steering group that we've got organised with people from the forum, from local elected members and community activists, as well as my members of our team. So there are opportunities for them to get involved in the steering group. And we're hoping that later in the year that there will be, through Chris and his colleagues at Manchester University, we'll be looking to do some more research. So there's a whole series of things, but as I said, the key thing here is that local people decide what's important to them. I just wanted to finish on one last thing, if that's okay. I mentioned that when Manchester joined the global network of age-friendly cities in 2010, we were one of around about 11 or 12 across the world, and it was a great accolade, I think, for us at the time. Now, there are something like 150 cities internationally, around about 10 to a dozen national networks, including one in the UK that Manchester has been a leader in setting up. And I guess the point I'm making is, and it kind of builds on the point that Chris made as well, about there are huge changes going on in our cities. Although Manchester's a little unusual in that respect, we will see the impact and effects of ageing communities. So we're part of an international, worldwide movement in a way, and certainly people like this are meeting all across the world grappling with the same issues. So I think it's something exciting to be involved in, and I think it's something that's worthwhile. So that's kind of where I'd leave it for now.
Okay. Right. Before we all say goodbye, I've got some thank yous. I want to thank, come back Russell, I want to thank you. I want to thank Russell because he's enabled the use of this building, and it has been a really nice venue, and we're very grateful for the fan up there. And can I also thank Whalley Range Community Forum, because I think you've been instrumental in making sure that we've had good refreshments as well as contributions. And can I thank this little row of people here on the front, and yourself, Paul, for all the support from the Valuing Older People team, because I think that's begun to make a huge difference. And this is just the beginning. We've started the debate. There's a lot more that's going to happen, because we together can make it happen. And I think that's one of the things that's come across to me tonight, is the untapped potential of older people. And I really liked your saying about, I'm an older person when I need something, but when I'm organising a conference, I'm the conference organiser. And it's understanding that we still have abilities, skills, and multiple personas, I suppose. To my granddaughter, I'm Granny. And to a lot of people here, I'm one of your local councillors. I don't see any difference really. It is all about relationships and putting things back into the community and to your family. Right. What?
Thank you to Chris.
Oh yeah, we've got to thank Chris, who's given us some academic validity.
Oh gosh. You don't want to.
It's always useful to have that. And I do understand that we might be doing some more research in the area. And we look forward to that, but we also look forward to things happening as well. I think the steering group, the age-friendly steering group, has got a lot to go on after today. And it's been great to see you all. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks for the chair.
Thanks, Chair. Excellent.
That's all right. You did lend academic validity.
Well, I think
That's what you have.
nice. Yeah.
And I mean, this is this thing's in action, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's very good.
Very good. I'm no academic at all, but I know the importance of being able to demonstrate things because you've looked at a range of stuff. And it's a very interesting time.